One weekend morning, my peaceful day was suddenly interrupted by the sound of my doorbell. I wasn't expecting visitors, so when I opened the door, I was completely shocked to see my sister's two young children standing on my porch, each clutching a small overnight bag. Before I could even ask what was happening, the older child quietly explained that their mother-me sister had gone on vacation and had instructed them that they were to stay with me. This wasn't just a quick getaway either. She had apparently decided, without asking, that I would babysit her kids for 8 entire weeks. I hadn't spoken to my sister in months, especially since our relationship had always been strained. Still reeling from confusion and anger, I immediately started trying to call her, demanding an explanation. After ignoring multiple calls, she finally picked up, sounding entirely unapologetic. When I threatened to call Child Protective Services if she didn't return immediately for her kids, her voice shifted to something sinister, and she coldly informed me that if I caused any trouble, she'd contact my workplace with damaging lies claiming that I was mentally unstable and off my medications, an accusation that could destroy my career. Feeling trapped and betrayed, I hung up the phone, overwhelmed with anxiety about what to do next. But little did I know, the worst was yet to come. Refusing to let me take control of the situation, my sister decided to escalate things even further. In a horrifying turn of events, she arranged for someone to physically assault me inside my own home, just so she could forcibly reclaim her children. It was at that terrifying moment that I fully grasped the lengths my sister would go to, driven purely by her twisted sense of entitlement. Growing up, it was painfully clear to me that my sister was always our family's favorite, the golden child. From a young age, everyone around us praised her endlessly for her striking beauty. With thick curly hair and sparkling eyes, she seemed effortlessly perfect, and people often couldn't resist complimenting her. My mother, especially, seemed to live through her, constantly comparing the two of us side by side. While my sister received endless admiration, I was always left in her shadow, quietly overlooked. I remember vividly how my mother would repeatedly comment on my appearance, pointing out how I wasn't as attractive or charming as my sister. She would insist that I try to mimic her style, her clothes, even her makeup, yet whenever I gathered the courage to ask my sister for help, she mocked and ridiculed me instead of offering any kindness. The constant comparisons and subtle insults deeply hurt my self-esteem, making me feel ugly, unwanted, and inferior. Over time, this toxic environment shaped both of us in drastically different ways. My sister internalized all that praise, becoming entitled, selfish, and ruthless, convinced that her beauty meant she could behave however she pleased without consequence. Meanwhile, I withdrew deeper into myself, becoming reserved, insecure, and painfully self-conscious. Our mother's favoritism not only created a huge rift between my sister and me, but it also left lasting scars that I'd carry well into adulthood, affecting my confidence, my relationships, and even the way I saw myself in the mirror each day. The emotional damage caused by my family's relentless favoritism left me deeply wounded, even as an adult. All those years of being constantly compared to my sister, always coming up short, always feeling inadequate, shattered my self-esteem in ways I couldn't fully grasp until much later. It wasn't just about feeling unattractive or inferior. The harsh judgment from my mother and the cruelty from my sister seeped deep into my soul, making me question my worth as a person. This toxic environment shaped my personality profoundly. As I grew older, I became quiet and reserved, hesitant to speak up or assert myself, even when I knew I should. Friends often described me as a pushover, someone who rarely stood up for herself because I had learned early on that my voice simply didn't matter. Relationships, whether friendships or romantic, became extremely difficult. Trusting people felt impossible, because deep down, I always feared rejection, always anticipating that I'd somehow disappoint those around me, just as I'd disappointed my family. It took many years, and eventually professional therapy, to even begin confronting these deep-rooted insecurities. Therapy wasn't easy. Each session was a battle to reclaim parts of myself that my family had stolen. Slowly, painfully, I started building the confidence and strength to stand up for myself. Yet, even now, the wounds remain. My mother's favoritism and my sister's cruelty weren't just painful memories. They were burdens that impacted every relationship I tried to build, leaving me cautious and guarded. forever struggling to find genuine connection and acceptance. As I navigated the painful dynamics of my family, things reached a heartbreaking low point during my senior year of high school. I was dating someone I genuinely cared about at the time, and despite all the negativity around me, he was one bright spot in my otherwise lonely teenage years. But that didn't last long. In an act that seemed purely spiteful, my sister deliberately slept with my boyfriend, even though she had openly said many times that she thought he was unattractive and unworthy of attention. It was as if she simply couldn't stand to see me experience any joy or happiness without intervening. When I found out what she had done, the betrayal cut deep. But the pain didn't end there. When my parents learned about it, instead of supporting me or confronting her, they casually brushed the entire incident aside, telling me to let bygones be bygones. They refused to acknowledge the severity of my sister's betrayal, or even hold her accountable for her actions. She faced no consequences at all, not even a mild reprimand, while I was left to suffer alone, feeling abandoned and utterly invisible. That moment painfully crystallized just how little my parents valued me compared to my sister. My father's passive silence and my mother's dismissive attitude sent a clear message. My feelings, my heartbreak, didn't matter to them at all. This betrayal further deepened my isolation and trust issues, reinforcing a painful truth I'd known all along. No matter what happened, my family would always side with my sister, leaving me standing alone, forgotten and unprotected. Despite all the pain and emotional neglect I endured throughout my childhood, there turned out to be one unexpected benefit of being constantly overshadowed by my sister: my intense focus on academics. Because I was often left out socially, I poured all of my time and energy into my schoolwork, studying diligently and excelling beyond anyone's expectations, including my own. I graduated high school at the very top of my class, maintaining a perfect 4 GPA. My hard work and dedication paid off in a big way when I received a full scholarship to the prestigious university that had always been my dream school. Ironically, the night before I started high school, my mother had coldly informed me that she and my father had decided to fully fund my sister's college education because she was their firstborn, while I would have to attend community college and figure out how to pay my own way. I remember sobbing in disbelief, begging my mother for answers as to why I was always treated as second best. She brushed it off, saying simply that my sister deserved it more. So when I finally secured my scholarship, I felt an intense wave of pride. For once in my life, I had achieved something incredible entirely on my own, without their help. Yet when I rushed home, eager to share this exciting news, my joy was quickly extinguished. My father responded with just a casual, "Good job," while my mother didn't even glance up from her phone. Instead of pride, excitement, or even acknowledgement, I received cold indifference and unspoken reminder of my place in our family. My mother's reaction stung deeply, confirming again just how isolated and unwanted I truly was. That moment made it painfully clear that no matter how successful I became, nothing I did would ever earn their love or recognition. Despite achieving incredible academic success and building a strong professional career, my family's attitude toward me never improved. Even as an adult, their coldness and indifference continued to follow me. I landed a fantastic job right after college and quickly climbed the ranks at my company, reaching a 6-figure salary by the time I was just 23 years old. It felt like all the pain and loneliness from my childhood had finally paid off. I was independent, financially secure, and thriving professionally. Yet, whenever I visited my family during holidays, they made a point of diminishing my accomplishments, refusing to acknowledge or celebrate any success I shared. While extended family members sometimes complimented me and showed genuine interest in my life, my own parent, especially my mother actively, worked to downplay and ignore anything good that happened to me. I learned very quickly never to mention my career highlights to my mum, knowing she would only respond with bitterness or hostility. One Christmas, when my uncle congratulated me on a recent promotion and asked about my plans to buy my first home, my mother abruptly cut into the conversation. She loudly announced that she was bored of hearing about me, muttering under her breath that I was probably making it all up. Later, when I did purchase my home and shared the milestone online, everyone in my family reacted positively. Everyone, that is, except for my mother, who completely ignored the news. I soon realized that my mother resented my success, because it sharply contrasted with my sister's chaotic life. Unlike me, my sister had dropped out of college, became pregnant by a casual boyfriend, and was living a turbulent life filled with drama. My achievements only seemed to deepen my mother's resentment toward me. It hurt me deeply, but it also made clear that no matter how successful or accomplished I became, my mother would always find reasons to diminish me and elevate my sister, preserving the painful family dynamic I'd struggled with my entire life. One morning, completely without warning, my sister decided to dump her 2 young sons at my doorstep. It had been months since we'd last spoken, and suddenly there they stood, my 10-year-old and 7-year-old nephews both, clutching small overnight bags and looking lost. When I asked what was happening, they quietly explained that their mum was leaving for a 2-month vacation, and she had told them that I'd be taking care of them. I was stunned, confused, and furious at the audacity of my sister, who hadn't even bothered to inform me about any of this. After multiple ignored calls, she finally answered my phone call with a disturbing calmness. When I insisted that she immediately return for her children and threatened to involve Child Protective Services, her voice turned ice cold. She made a chilling threat. If I caused any trouble for her, she'd sabotage my career by calling my employer and falsely accusing me of being mentally unstable and off my medication. She knew exactly how much my career meant to me and cruelly used it as leverage. Feeling utterly trapped and devastated, I hung up, not knowing what to do next. I was also deeply anxious because I had an important trip planned in just a few weeks to visit my long-distance boyfriend overseas, a trip meant for meeting his family for the first time, something we'd both been anticipating for months. Now, everything was suddenly thrown into chaos. As a last resort, I reached out to my mother, hoping she would see reason. But just as she'd always done, my mother sided immediately with my sister, blaming me instead for being selfish. In a painful argument, she accused me of never being there for family, even though neither she nor my sister had ever supported me. When I pushed for more answers, demanding to know what was so urgent about my sister's sudden vacation, my mother eventually revealed the shocking truth. My sister wasn't on vacation at all. She had abandoned her kids to spend 8 weeks abroad with a wealthy sugar daddy. I was beyond horrified. Instead of providing stability for her own children, my sister chose to abandon them so she could indulge herself. Even more disturbing was my mother's complete indifference. Saw nothing wrong with this behavior, once again reinforcing just how little my family valued anything other than my sister's selfish whims. At that moment, I understood clearly how alone I truly was, and that protecting my nephews now fell entirely on me. Feeling overwhelmed and desperate, I called my boyfriend Eric, who was thousands of miles away in Australia. I poured out my fears and anxieties about my sister's threats, how she'd tried to blackmail me by jeopardizing my career, and the chaos she'd brought into my life. Eric calmly reassured me, reminding me that my sister's actions weren't just morally wrong, they were criminal. He advised me to protect myself by gathering concrete evidence against her, suggesting that I secretly record our next conversation to document her threats clearly. Following Eric's advice, I called my sister again, this time determined to keep my emotions in check. It didn't take long before she repeated her chilling threats. She openly said she would falsely report to my workplace that I was mentally unstable and off my medication. Knowing fully well how devastating that could be for my career, she laughed cruelly, mocking me, convinced she had complete control over my life. I captured every word of her cruel threats on audio, feeling both terrified and strangely empowered. For the first time, I had undeniable evidence of her manipulative cruelty, proof of her willingness to harm my livelihood simply to get what she wanted. After ending the call, I immediately contacted Child Protective Services and reported the situation, sharing the recording as clear evidence of her actions. CPS quickly recognized how serious the situation was, confirming that my sister was indeed committing several crimes, including child abandonment and blackmail. Although reporting my own sister was emotionally draining and frightening, I knew deep down it was the right thing to do, not only for my own safety, but, more importantly, for the safety and well-being of my innocent nephews, who deserved far better than the chaos their mother had forced upon them. After discovering I had contacted CPS, my sister became completely unhinged. Early one morning, she showed up at my house unannounced, bringing along a huge, intimidating man I'd never seen before. Without warning, he violently shoved me aside, forcing his way into my home while my sister and mother silently watched. Terrified, I tried to protect my nephews, who were woken up and confused by the chaos. As I desperately pleaded with her to stop, my sister coldly ordered the stranger to grab the kids and take them outside. When I fought back, he slammed my head into the wall, leaving me dizzy and helpless on the floor. Before leaving, my sister approached me, looked directly into my eyes, and spat in my face a final, degrading insult. Watching them drive away with my frightened nephews was one of the worst moments of my life. In the aftermath, I immediately called the police and reported everything. Because I'd memorized their license plate and could describe the man in detail, the police were able to track them down. When confronted by authorities, my sister and her accomplice violently resisted arrest, attacking multiple police officers before finally being subdued. My nephews were thankfully rescued by CPS and placed into protective care. Over the following months, I pressed charges against my sister and mother for breaking into my home and physically assaulting me. After a lengthy court battle filled with dramatic twists, my sister received a life sentence for her numerous crimes, and my mother narrowly avoided prison by testifying against her. Despite the emotional toll, I remained focused on protecting my nephews. Determined, I fought a difficult custody battle that lasted nearly 2 years, eventually winning full guardianship. I'll never forget the joy and relief on their faces when they finally came home. Reuniting with them, I knew the struggle had all been worth it. They were finally safe, loved, and exactly where they belonged.